Thank you very much for being here this evening. Just to introduce myself, my name's James Ski. I'm the founder of Sales Confidence. Also, I have a day job working for Drift and Richard Wright nowadays. Having a lot of fun, but I'm amazed to see people in person again. And I just wanted to start with a round of applause to yourselves. Give yourselves a round of applause. Because you've made the effort to get out of the house, get out of your pajamas and come and have a good time. And as we've already found out, you've already spent the full amount of the bar spend. So thankfully, these are our sponsors. So if you've spoken to anyone with one of their names on the shoulder, just tap them on the shoulder and just say, can we up the bar spend a little bit? So I'm really excited to bring this back. Can I just get a raise of hands? Who's been to a Sales Confidence event before? Amazing, welcome back. And for the first timers, put your hand up. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for making an effort to come out here tonight. So I'm not going to be doing this alone this evening. I've got my wonderful co-host, Ollie Sharpe from SalesLoft, VP of Revenue. Round of applause for Ollie. And Ollie's going to be saying a few words in a moment. We just want to highlight what the format of this event is. So usually we just invite a couple of our sponsors just to give you an outline of what they're up to in their day-to-day business. None of this would be possible without their support. And then we're going to invite three of our main speakers tonight. We've got Lauren Wright from Demodesk, Wendy Harris from Gong, and then we're going to finish off with Kieron Smith from Acin. So everybody, it's not easy to get on stage and do a 7-minute talk, so I really appreciate if you can keep your hands to yourselves, i.e. your phones off, and stay focused on the content. We're only going to be sitting down for about 45 minutes and then you can get back to the networking and the drinking. But it is really important that we respect the speakers that put in a lot of effort this evening. So Ollie.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. The lights are pretty bright. If it's shining off my head, I'm sorry. Thank you. I haven't even done anything yet. So welcome. It's great to be back at in-person events, and thank you for turning up. I think the first one's always a bit risky, but quite exciting at the same time. You want to go. So thank you. It's great to be back. Let's face it, lots has changed over the since we were doing this before. I know that James has held some great events in the past and we missed them, but lots have changed. We've got new words and phrases out there, and I'm just surprised that I could last 18 months in jogging pants and a hoodie, which was fucking brilliant. So that was great for my lifestyle. But the sales industry has changed, and I think that it was changing anyway for me, that I could see that trust and empathy were becoming more important. And I think that what's happened with COVID and everything speeded that whole process up, which is brilliant, because I think we are more advanced in the way that we sell now than we were before. I think that it's more about the relationships, building trust, using empathy, which I think is fantastic. I think leadership styles have had to change. I think we now actually trust our more junior people within our teams, which is great because they weren't allowed to work at home before. I think so leadership styles have changed, and it's all come from remote working. So I think the change in the industry has been fantastic. I mean, we sell a sales engagement platform to sales leaders, and we can see a massive change. And I really like that. I think that me and a few other people in the room have really pushed to change the sales industry around mental well-being, about how we trust and how we think about sales leadership. So I'm pleased to say that. And also through this time, Sales Confidence has continued to engage the sales community, which I'm really pleased with. I mean, SaaS Growth was a really good event this year, so well done to James and the team. Thank you. And we've been the main sponsor for Sales Confidence for about 2 years now, since 2019. And it's something that we've got a lot from, building relationships with people and being able to impact the industry. I think that's what helps me and what actually I enjoy about it the most. But we've also changed through lockdown SalesLoft as a business. And we went from before lockdown, we had about 10 employees in EMEA. Now we're at 60, and we've built the support side, customer success, everything. So we're a self-contained business unit now that we can help our clients and be close to them. We went into lockdown blue. We've turned out green. We've rebranded. So you may have seen that, what's in the box kind of thing. And with that rebrand, we've started telling a new story, the story of the modern revenue workspace. And what this comes from really is what's happened in the US. So what we saw in the US is 3-4 years ago, sales tech started booming and people were buying sales tech to stop salespeople wasting time with admin and all of these kind of things. And they then buy 8 bits of tech that now waste their time because they've got to log into 8 different places. So having a modern revenue workspace where they can go to one place to help them advise who to be contacting, when to be contacting, with which message, helping coaching is our new story. So you will hear more about that as you go, hopefully, if we do our branding right. And I honestly think we've changed as individuals. So for me, COVID changed me, I think. You start appreciating different things to what you did before, which I think has been fantastic. So there is some good come from it. I know that people have struggled, but to look for the good, I think, is important. New or revived hobbies. I took up tennis again after not playing since 14. I had quite a few injuries and probably regret it a little bit. But I think a lot of people have really understood how to appreciate the simple things in life, whether it's nature, whether it's the people around them, whether it's time. And I think that's the good thing to take from this. What I do remember is at the beginning of lockdown, when we were at home, there seemed to be loads of time. There seemed to be that hour before work where you weren't commuting and the one after. Fuck knows where that went. Somehow it's disappeared and we're now just working the extra hour either side. So one thing is, for me, I talk a lot in the industry about mental well-being. And I think that now is the time that I think mental well-being became one of the forefront when we went through lockdown, because it was very important. What I might ask to leaders in the room is that it's not a box ticked and now we're okay, because I think what's happening is going to provide different challenges for us and our teams. I think that some people have maybe got less used to socializing. Some people maybe have high expectations of what real world can be like, and it doesn't live up to it. So as leaders, my one ask is that we don't just assume that everything's okay and back to normal. We're mindful of our teams, and whether they're introverts, extroverts, whether they're bothered about socializing, we look after them and don't just assume that it's all okay and it's all over. That's my one request from tonight. But that's it from me. Thank you for giving me the time. I'm introducing the first guest.
Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Matt Blanchard, who's coming up. Matt's the GM for EMEA for Varicent. Welcome, Matt. Popular guy. So Matt's been in compensation management for over a decade. Works at Practique Associates, Mercer Systems, I think I said that right, and Nice Systems, and then joined IBM to lead the sales performance management business that then got branched off and is now Varicent,
correct,
I believe. Self-admittedly, doctor's nightmare because he's lactose intolerant, so stay away from dairy. But also, if you see him running, it's probably because he's near a wasp, because he's also allergic to wasps. So it's probably not great.
At least you didn't tell him I was scared of them.
Yeah, I was going to tell people he was scared because that'd be worse. But me and Matt are just going to have a chat about it. I think, was that because you couldn't before it, or?
Well, I've already done a load of these virtually, and I didn't want to do it.
So this is your first year sponsoring Sales Confidence.
Correct.
And this question is not going, why the fuck did you do it? But why did you choose to do it?
James told us to.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good point.
No, but we've been watching the community grow over probably the last 2 years as we were inside of IBM and then as we left. And so we decided that actually we wanted to give back to the community, and whether it be in the form of sponsorship or whether it be in the form of just communication, for us it was something that we had to do. And James is growing this from area to area, as in bigger to bigger, and we wanted to be one of the biggest sponsors, but obviously he had other plans, so we had to stay lower in the packages.
Okay, and what did Varicent do?
So in its simplest form, we help make sure that salespeople get paid commission. So whether it be in the form of services people or salespeople, we want to make sure you get paid on time and in a way that you understand. So really simple. I bought into this because of the fact that I like money myself. So it was the simplest thing for me, was making sure that it was transparent and easy for me to understand. And that's what we do.
Okay, what I'm interested in, and hopefully these guys are as well, is you as a leader.
Oh.
Okay.
They're here.
We're not really prepared to talk a few questions. So tell us, what's your superpower as a leader? Where do you think your strengths are?
Oh, I've got a big credit card and the expenses are paid on time. No, I think that the key thing for me is always empathy. Throughout COVID, we've learned that we are different people. We're different in the way in which we interact with one another. We're different in the way in which people come to us as management as well. And I think as a leader, it's making sure that you address every challenge as it comes, but at the same time, we're still there to sell. So it's making sure that we're giving them the tools and the necessity, or not even the necessity, but the tools that they require to do their job day in, day out, and making sure we're there to support them. And so I think, hopefully, this lot will say that's one of the things I do well.
Cool, okay, and I haven't told many of these questions from now on, so what's been your biggest challenge?
What's been my biggest?
COVID through this time.
So we left IBM on the very first day that COVID happened.
Okay,
so we'd set up an office, we had a skeleton staff, we were going to be coming out big and better, we were going to be Varicent, the cool company, and then Boris said, you're not going anywhere. And so we basically had to build a business behind closed doors. We had to go to market with marketing and everything without really testing it. And that caused us a huge challenge, not just from a branding perspective, but as a person that's just left that large ecosystem, going to a small team. So I think you mentioned 10 to 61. We left IBM as 24 and we're now 71. And so that's in 18 months. We onboarded 50 people remotely, which is ridiculous. And some of them actually stayed, which was useful. So,
so you onboarded double that.
Oh yeah, correct. If you don't ask HR. But for us, that was the hardest part, is making sure you're bringing the right people into the right culture and then that you're driving it in the right way. Because it's okay having people to be there and to do the job and be at home, but actually having them understand what we do, what our culture is, what we're trying to achieve for our customers, because ultimately our customers are the biggest thing. We work with the likes of T-Mobile, Telefonica, American Express, even all the way down to some of the smaller ones. But fundamentally, they are the ones that pay our bills and allow us to pay James to turn up at these events and get told we're speaking.
And are you going back to an office or are you all remote?
So at the minute, we're going back to a hybrid style. Okay. So I'm one for getting out and enjoying myself. So the team hopefully enjoy that too. But if not, they're going to do it with me. So fundamentally,
drag them along.
Yeah, correct. Okay. So we've got an office. We're going to go hybrid model. We're going to allow people the opportunity to do what they want, because that's what we did anyway. Historically, we were traveling 4 or 5 days a week. We were having meetings with clients. Now we're going back to client meetings as well. So fundamentally, we're giving the option to our staff versus anybody else.
What are you most wary of with that change, transitioning back to what people see as the norm? What are your concerns? What do you concentrate on?
I think it depends. Me versus our CEO are two very different things. Okay. Our CEO is Canadian, very reserved, doesn't want anybody to leave their house ever again. I'm of the opposite. I would like people to join this with us and to effectively get back to some form of normality. But the challenge is you can't force people to do that. And with mental health and with the fact that we have been cooped up for such a long period of time, getting back on a train can be a hard thing for somebody. Getting on a tube, which I'm never doing again, is just not something that you'd never anticipate being a challenge. But people do. And so we have to take that on board and we have to listen to what they're saying to make sure we give them what they desire to come to work for us.
Thank you. That's the last question.
Thank you.
You're right. Matthew, thank you very much.
That was good.
Cheers, Ollie. Who's next?
Who's next?
Sorry, I got...
You know, I did. It's you and Richard. It's me.
All right. We've got to keep them on their toes. So next up, I'm very fond of this individual because I joined him to build out the region for the UK and Europe. And so next up is the VP of Sales for Drift. Can we have a round of applause for Richard from Drift, please?
Bloody hell.
Beautiful.
That's when I lived in California.
I'm a big fan of Richard's, and I've got to know him over the last 6-7 months since we built out the Drift team from nobody. So how many have we got in the team now, Richard?
22.
22. So just for the purpose of this evening, this one's going to be short and snappy. It'd be helpful just to understand what the hell is Drift and why should people care about it?
Yeah, I'll rather than talk about Drift, I'll talk to you about a call I had last night with a customer. They've been a customer for a year and all dealing with the same thing, how to engage customers in a different way today. And here we are, a year later, after signing them up, they've driven $23 million of new revenue, strictly through the Drift platform.
Love it.
Better way of engaging with customers, understanding what prospects want, understanding when salespeople can see a person who's got intent to buy. So putting those tools in the hands of sales and marketing is basically what we do and help them better engage with these customers today.
Amazing. And what about you? What makes you special?
You didn't tell me this.
I think.
What makes me special is I thought you were 5'6" when I hired you, and then I met you and this big dude shows up.
True. Well, no, what's a bit of one of the things that we've been gifted from you, which is a bit of a specialty of yours that we've received. What do you send send out to new employees?
Oh, tequila.
Yes.
I do like my tequila.
Any fans of tequila in the room?
Love tequila.
So it's people like to learn a little bit more about the person behind the brand. So what is it about the tequila that you love?
Well, I grew up in most of my life in California from the age of 19, and it's a big drink there. And I got into CrossFit, and it's all about paleo diet. So I just started drinking it, and I love it, and it doesn't give me a hangover. It's kind of an upper instead of a downer.
Brilliant.
So it's cool. I like it.
Love it. Are there any final thoughts or anything you would want to add to the audience about what we're doing in the UK and Europe?
Yeah, I mean, we've built a really cool team. There's some of them in the crowd. I'm wearing my Drift shirt here. I do take tequila as bribes if you want to learn a bit more about our exciting technology. But we've grown a great team. I'm really proud of our team, and it's going to keep growing. So we put the customer at the center of everything we do. So we don't just say it, we mean it. And that's last night on that call, when I talked to that customer, and they said, we love your technology, but what we like more is the culture. And it's this leadership principle that we have about the customers at the middle of everything we do.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Round of applause to Richard. Ollie, are you doing this intro?
I've got the agenda, mate. Okay.
You're doing Lauren Wright.
I'll do that. You sit down. All right. Okay. So next up, we've got Lauren Wright. Lauren is the VP of Revenue for Demodesk. She's got a background in finance, started a career at American Express. Most recently, before joining Demodesk, she was at Glassdoor as VP or Director of EMEA Sales. And she joined Demodesk last year, back end of November. And born and raised in San Francisco. And I don't want to just tell you her LinkedIn profile. I want to tell you things that probably aren't on there. It's probably more interesting. Born and raised in San Francisco, lived in Paris, New York, and London, and 2 years in Aspen, Colorado. I haven't been drinking. And in an attempt to be a ski bum. And in her time, she was actually top 25 in California at ski racing. So very impressive. But nowadays has turned her sporting prowess to tennis. A lot easier. I even injure myself at that. So Lauren is going to be talking about building a revenue team in a new era of work with the hybrid model, etc. Lauren, come and join.
Right. I mean, just to set the record straight, I was like a ranked skier when I was like 7. It was not while I was trying to be a ski bum. That just didn't work out. So here I am back in the work world. But that was kind of inspiring because I would like to kind of dust off my skis and maybe get a chalet in the Alps this winter, work from there. And that all seems possible in today's world. Except it's a little bit complicated. And that's what I'm talking about today, which is this new era of work that we're in, that obviously the pandemic has changed everything. We heard a little bit about hybrid office culture. I think everyone's kind of struggling with their own identity right now. Like, are we office first? Are we going back to the office? How are we sort of building a sales team? And it is really complicated. And you think about, like, how do I build a sales team in today's world when, maybe during the pandemic you dumped your office and you're all working remotely. I, for one, I'm building a team right now. And Demodesk is a meeting platform that allows people to work from anywhere. So sort of in an aspirational way, I had a moment where I thought, well, yeah, let's hire anyone, anywhere. And let's just hire the best talent. And in reality, I had to retreat from that thought because it's really, really complicated to hire people in different places and all of a sudden think about, how do we support them in different countries, and how do we give them benefits that matter? And so we moved from there to creating hubs. We created a hub in Portugal, not by design, but I do like to spend a lot of time in Portugal, so it was kind of nice. We built a hub here, and we also have an existing headquarters in Munich. So we really kind of changed our strategy and decided, okay, hey, let's find the best talent there, and then build a remote culture around that. But it even gets more complicated in the hybrid world. Like, should we allow people to then go for 2 weeks and work from anywhere? And it turns out that in itself is rather complicated, and you could get yourself into a little bit of an HR mess if you don't have a policy built around, okay, what can I really allow my employees to do? What is the law? I have no idea, to be honest. I learned a lot in the past 6 or so months about visas and where people can work and what's acceptable. In fact, I spent my own time, I remember doing maybe a sales confidence event from Portugal at one point in time, and realized that I was actually extending my own personal time there, and I wasn't allowed to be there, so I had to get back into the UK pretty quickly because I am on a visa. So it is really, really complicated when you're trying to build a sales team in this remote world. So number one is having a policy and understanding who you're trying to hire. So I think when the pandemic started, there were a lot of companies that said, like, okay, we're remote first. We're dumping our offices and we're going to have studios. And like, what is a studio? What does that really mean for a sales team? How do you have a studio? And a lot of people kind of followed suit and then retreated from that because, of course, if you think about what is meaningful for people who are maybe a little more seasoned in their career, yeah, remote work is great. We don't want to take the tube anymore. We don't want to, we maybe want to be in our hoodies for at least a few days a week. But when you think about graduates who are coming out of school who've never actually experienced what it's like to be in an office and the energy of an office and meeting people, and their networks are on LinkedIn, but they've never actually met the people in person that are their connections. It's a different experience. So you really have to think about who you're hiring in the future and how to support them best and help them grow their careers and have really human experiences. So that was a really important moment for us as we thought about, okay, how do we build a culture? And we actually went to this remote hybrid model where we will have people coming into offices, and we'll have offices, not studios, but like real offices with real desks where people can go and work, especially in your sales development roles where people really need to have that kind of camaraderie. And hey, it's not easy to do that in a small space in your own house, and maybe not a house, in your own flat, and trying to just hit the phones hard and be by yourself and not have anybody else. So there are some real mental health issues that come about when you don't think about like how are we going to use our office. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, now that we have offices, we have to think about what that means. I've heard some kind of cringeworthy policies that are coming out of like, okay, pandemic's over, everybody back in the office. But the reality is the world is different now. And making everybody go back to the office, even having a cold in the office is different. Like, can you remember? There are plenty of times I've looked around the sales floor and pretty much like everybody had a cold, right? And everyone just kind of worked through it. And it was kind of gross. But we dealt with it. But now, imagine, like, you have a cold, someone else has a cold, like people are gonna freak out. Like, it's gonna be bad. So we've got to figure out like sick leave and really how we kind of deal with some of these issues and how we become much more flexible. You saw sort of like consumer market becomes flexible. Amazon kind of drove flexibility in the consumer market. Employment needs to become flexible. And we have to figure out a way to become compliant and flexible at the same time and also support our people. So we're going to have distributed teams, even if we have an in-office culture. We're going to have people working from different places because we just don't know what the future looks like. And that means that we need to invest in technology that helps enable people and helps them learn and helps them be better at their roles. And you see a lot of, we talked about sales technology, heard a little bit about sales technology, and that's, I think a lot of the sponsors here are also in this ecosystem. And it's really important to figure out how do you manage people when you're not in an office? How do you actually manage and support people and have visibility into what's going on? And be able to, for example, we use our own tool to shadow meetings, and it makes it really easy for someone in Portugal. We actually have a rep today who's ramping in Madeira, so she's in our hub. She's allowed to be in Portugal. She's in Madeira. She chose like the island life, which is super cool. But she's able to be really connected with the team because she's able to shadow meetings all the time, and we give her a really easy playbook through which she's able to ramp quickly. So you've got to think about how do we deal with this and support people. So one, think about like as you build these policies for your company, think about who you're going to hire and who can really be remote. And then communicate a really strong policy around like what it really means to be remote, where you can work, how long you can work from, and check with your HR partners. It certainly isn't my area of expertise, but I learned a lot about it. And then also figure out how to support your people and enable your people and invest in sales enablement. It's one of the biggest markets right now, and it's growing quickly. And there's probably a lot to talk about, but I feel like I'm at the end or over my 7 minutes. I always go over the 7 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Can we get Wendy's slides up, please? So some of you not familiar, that if you're aware, we actually have a time limit on the speakers, which is 7 minutes, and you were in it. But one of the things, this concept of 7 minutes just came about some years ago when we realized that we wanted to hold people to a standard. So you can watch every previous talk on YouTube, and you can see every previous 7-minute talk that's ever been spoken over the last 4 years. So our next speaker is Wendy Harris. And I'm just going to say that I mentioned to her on Monday, yesterday, she informs me, sorry, that was Tuesday, that I saw her name on the guest list. I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful if she got up and gave us 7 minutes of wisdom? So she only found out about this talk about yesterday. So please give her a massive round of applause after I've introduced her. And Wendy, she's also travelled over from Ireland. She joined Gong in May this year as the head of EMEA. Previously, she was SVP and UK MD of Car Gurus, where she onboarded as VP of European Sales in 2018. She's got an extensive background. In fact, you can hear some of that on one of the videos on YouTube about her time at Goldman Sachs. So she spent time in the investment banking world, as well as other major tech companies like Dropbox, AdRoll, and Facebook. She's a passionate mentor, and she brings a supportive management style to her teams. And she's going to be talking about where revenue meets reality. Round of applause, please.
Okay. The challenge. Got it. Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. All right. So I was the nerd that brought slides because he only asked me yesterday and I didn't know what the gig was. So I've never been to one of these. So I apologize. It won't be death by PowerPoint. Very conscious I'm in the death zone here. You've all just finished your drinks. Want to get to the bar. You didn't get 2 drinks. That's on you, not me. I got 2. So we'll try and make it as painless as possible. And I also have a pathological fear of public speaking. So try and make it, be nice to me, please, now, because I'm scared. Okay. Got it wrong. I wasn't meant to press the button. Okay, start again. Right. So in a previous world, I worked for a company that wasn't Gong. And in that world, we decided to acquire another company. And it was our first acquisition. Everyone was tremendously excited. And we spent a lot of money and it was all great. Anyhow, we then went and trained the team on how to sell the product. And we took them off the floor for 2 days, a full-blown training, value proposition, the lark, all the marketing materials. And then we released them into the wild and everyone waited with anticipation to see the great results roll in. And as you can imagine, that didn't happen. And everyone who had paid for the other company, i.e. my C-level execs and the board, wanted to know what the hell was going on and why were we not in fact making lots of money. So I went to the CRM and I said, okay, CRM, tell me what is happening. Why is this not working? Because we spent lots of money and we trained everyone and it should be rolling in. And the CRM basically told me very little because it gives you the data, the lagging indicators and all the dashboards and everything else, but doesn't tell you why that's happening. We're going to do audience participation time. Quick show of hands. How many of you feel confident that your sales reps fill in the CRM with 100% accuracy? Okay, there's 3 people at the back who are clearly sales reps, not leaders. Okay, we're discounting you. How many people feel confident it is with 50% accuracy? Anyone? Okay, There's a few leaders who are nicer than me. I would say chances are the accuracy is minimal at best, and I didn't sell value / I was hungover isn't on the list. So, problem with these conversations is they are filtered. 6,000 words in a conversation, 30 of them make it into the CRM. Just think about that. There's 6,000 words in a conversation you have with the customer, and at best, 30 make them into a CRM. And these 30 words are all 30 words devised by the sales rep. Okay, so it's their subjective opinion about what's actually just happened on that call. So I went to the CRM first, and then obviously I went and I said, okay, hello sales team. We've just trained you. We've just spent a lot of money on this acquisition. Why are you not making money? And they're like, oh, well, and I went to 10 different people and I got 10 different answers. And then there was one brilliant sales rep, female, I'd like to point out, one absolute genius female sales rep. And she was amazing, but to be fair to her, she was so amazing, she didn't actually know what made her amazing. She was just doing what she always does, which is sell. So she couldn't tell me what she was doing differently to be able to sell this combined value proposition of the two companies. So I was like, oh, good Lord. And I tried to spend time shadowing her, but inevitably I have no time. I'm on between meetings all the time. And so I try and catch some of her calls and I catch the last 10 minutes or her on hold, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, not good use of time. So question here. When I say new business transformation, I'm talking about new products, pricing, packaging. I'm talking about moving up market or moving into new verticals or acquiring companies. What percentage of new business transformations fail? Somebody give me a number. 90. Anyone else? Ooh. Punchy. I see where we're going with this. Any other guesses? Okay, 92.3 actually. No. So the answer is 70%. 70% of new business transformations fail. Another show of hands. How many of you would get onto a plane if you knew that 70% of the time it would not make it to the end destination? So why, in God's name, do we accept this? So when we think about which of your strategic initiatives can't fail, new offerings, this is the new product, the new pricing, the new SKUs, you all get pulled off the floor, trained on this, and then released into the wild. Sales messaging. How many of you here have spent money on Sandler or Command of the Message or whatever these things are called, and lots of different things, and it's like, okay, we're going to train them and it's going to be great, we're going to make lots more money. Lastly, go-to-market strategy. You move up market, you go into enterprise, you're like, now we're going to nail Google, or you look at it and you go and you say, we're going to acquire this company. How many of these major bets that companies make can you afford to fail on? And the problem is with all of them, you end up taking reps away from selling, away from the frontline roles and say, okay, you're now going to be trained in a room for 2 days and then you're going to go put this into practice. And fact, 87% of what is learned is lost after 1 month. It's very sad, isn't it? Yes. But it's also reality because at the end of the day, we all sit there and it's painful to be in a training room for 2 days and it's inevitable. In fact, I'm surprised it's not a higher number, frankly. So 87% of this is trained. So we've spent all this money on this new methodology or acquiring this new company, release them into the wild. We're not seeing the results we have. And guess what? Almost every single company spends all the money up front and none of the money on making sure that what they actually train them on is used in practice. They don't spend any money post the initial training to make sure it's put into practice. It's ridiculous. So, how can you get visibility before it's too late? Quick question. Any Gong customers in the audience? Show of hands. Well, then you know the answer. Marvelous. This is where we come in. So Gong, what are we? We are a revenue intelligence platform. What we do is we capture your interactions across phone, email, web conference. We integrate with your CRM, and we apply artificial intelligence, which is very clever stuff. And we give you insights into your deals, your people, and your market. So in a world where I had Gong, when I did this acquisition with this company and led this team and said, why the hell are we not making money? I'm under a lot of pressure here. I would have actually been able to see, of all the people who got trained, what percentage of them actually implemented what they learned, what percentage of them adopted the messaging, and on what percentage of calls. And I could have intervened if people weren't doing it. And secondly, I could have heard the voice of the customer. I could have heard what the customer was saying about the acquisition from the actual customer. I could have seen like real life what was actually happening. And therefore, I could have understood what the best rep was doing, what that fabulous female rep, what was she doing differently, and how could I get what she was doing and apply it to all of the other, I won't say losers, but middle of the pack / lower end of the pack. So, The point is, don't wait a full sales cycle to fail. You don't want to be part of the 70% stat, okay? You do not need to be part of that 70% stat. There is another world. You don't need to just wait, just roll them all out, send them into the wild and see what happens at the end of it. There's another world you can live in. And Vinit, where are you? Vinit is our biggest. Vinit, there we are. Round of applause for Vinit, please. COO and co-founder of Filtered. Filtered was one of the earliest customers of Gong in EMEA, and I'd like to think that we did well by you, Vinit, as well, helping you decrease sales cycle by 2 months. 62% increase in ACV. Does that sound good to anybody? You have a few people, surely. But if you don't believe me, then go and chat to Vinit. And if you don't believe him, well, you know. So, in summary, we give you full visibility into your deals. Which half of your deals in your pipeline are real? Fun fact, 53% of deals that are in commit never close. 53% of deals that are in commit never close. So we're coming to the end of a quarter. Do you know which half of your pipeline is real? We will show you. People, do you know why your top reps are your top reps? I mean, don't we all want to clone them? You can do that now. And finally, strategy. Understand who has adopted the messaging in the training and what your customers are saying before it's too late, before you become part of that 70% stat. So we have been voted #1 on G2's list of best software products in 2021. So yay us. And we actually have 2,000 customers globally, but we only launched in Europe in June and we already have over 250 customers. So yay me. And 1 million calls recorded. And a 93% record rate. So we basically say 7% of calls are opt-out. Everyone says, nobody's going to want my customers to record them. Well, guess what? 93% of them are grand with it, so get over it. So if you're interested, gong.io/demo, connect me on LinkedIn, follow us, and thank you very much. There is an alternative universe.
Well done. Fair play for keeping it interactive and entertaining. That's much appreciated. So we're up to our final speaker, and then we're going to be out drinking again. I know a few of you are getting fidgety, so we'll keep this within the 7-8 minutes that Kieron's got. So our final speaker today, I actually met a few years ago, I think in Paris, wasn't it? At SaaStock, and asked him for some advice about sales confidence, which I took on board and grew it to where it is today, I would say. His talk, he's going to be talking about mindset, performance, and money. How many of us are in it for the money? Yes. Not as many as I expected. The importance of mindset in the sales environment and supporting the psychology of your team. Kieron describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, having led several buyouts as CEO and creating $100 million in exit value across several B2B software vendors. He's recently just joined a SaaS scale-up. Is it Acin or Acin, a global risk network vendor as CRO in August this year. And I'll hand it over to you. You mic'd or you lectern?
Right, great, thank you. By the way, James, you got my name wrong twice.
Oh, sorry.
But it's fine. It's quite funny. Obviously, you've had too much to drink.
He had to remind me. He couldn't have waited till afterwards.
And Wendy, that was amazing. I wish I had your flair. Very good, very good. Well, good evening, Sales Confidence. James asked me to talk about mindset, performance, and well-being. So I'm going to do that with quite a heavy sales spin. I've been in C-level roles for a while. I've led some buyouts and I've invested in some businesses. And over that time, I've learned that quite a lot of complicated, difficult things that we all do as salespeople can be quite simple to do well. So I'm going to start with vision, planning, and strategy. So my question to you is, in any sales role, do you have a vision for the next 2 years in your sales role? Because it can't just be achieving your numbers. It needs to be broader than that. Like owning your territory or being the primary go-to vendor, making your customers know that you're better than the competition at something specific. And your plan needs to include all the activity to make these things happen, whether it's lobbying the marketing team to focus their messaging, running specific campaigns, collaborating with industry bodies, you name it. You can't just be selling to clients. More needs to be happening in the background, and you need to be driving that. So once you've got a vision, you need a detailed plan to achieve it, including strategies for each initiative. Think it through in detail, bounce it off the people around you. If you've got a mentor, even better. The army tell you that the better you're planning, the less likely you are to get killed. Well, I think the salespeople in this audience prefer the outcome where you get to live and drive fast cars. So I've modified that to the better you're planning, the more likely you are to absolutely kill it. And the temptation sometimes can be just to get on with it. There's no time like the present. But if you think it all through first, you're less likely to head off in the wrong direction. So that's vision and planning and strategy. So once you've done that, then it's all about the next bit, which I call seeing around corners. And basically we're all on the hook for a forecast, right? So an important part of the planning process are all your assumptions. Sounds boring, but none of us can see the future, but I think I've learned a pretty neat trick that's got me quite close. And that starts with writing down all your assumptions, all the assumptions that need to be true. And I usually have 10 to 15 for any forecast. And you need those to ensure you hit that number. And each one of those affects the forecast in a certain way. So doing this allows you to update your forecast as the assumptions change. And that gives you a real-time picture of where you might end up. And with that, you're able to take corrective action ahead of time to make sure you accommodate that changing landscape, because change it will. And importantly, some of those assumptions may relate to, say, internal activity from marketing or product. And if you need these things to happen to fill your pipe and do your deals, then they're really important assumptions. And it's when those assumptions start to trip you up, and that's when you know exactly what the impact on the forecast is going to be. And that's what I mean by seeing around corners. You know what's going to happen ahead of time. So and you only need to do this a few times before you get the right sort of experience and how it works, and that gives you confidence. And that allows you to rely on your predictions because you know that it's a repeatable process. Who'd have thought all that well-being from a process? So thirdly, you've got your forecasting, you're feeling more confident about that, you've got your vision and your plan, and now it's about doing deals. And I call this always taking control. And especially when you're talking about big deals. We've all been told by our bosses not to jump through the customer's hoops, make them jump through ours, and that we have a playbook for a reason because it works, it's the best way to make sales. Well, small sales might be a more simple matter of need and budget, but larger deals have always got more people involved and there's a lot more going on in the background. So finding ways to get to all those people and understand the landscape means taking control of the narrative and not asking if you can meet somebody, rather telling them why they have to meet you. And oftentimes that's not directly related to the requirement you're selling to. It's indirect, which means you need even better reasons to get time in people's diaries and open them up to explaining that landscape. And I've got a couple of examples, big deal examples. In 2016, I signed a customer called Magento. I say there was a team of us involved. I was head of the team. And they launched their cloud service with us. And in 4 years, that grew from 0 to 1.5 million monthly MRR. That was about a $200 million increase in the value of that business. They're called Platform. So, deal strategy is always about getting your customers thinking in the right way. And for these guys, I had to do a couple of things. We had to make them think about the effect our platform would have on their marketplace of literally thousands of online retailers. And for that, we needed to devise credible productivity metrics, which we didn't have at the time, so that we were able to help them weigh up the ROI of the deal, but through our lens. And late last year, actually, before I left this business, I used those metrics to estimate about $1 billion per annum in savings and gains that the 1,800 customers they brought onto the platform were making. So that's really, it's really significant at the start to win the deal and then later on in the deal. Secondly, I had to create the right level of FUD about our main competitor. And we had to socialise that amongst decision makers. And for that, we needed help from an investment bank and a hedge fund. And that was all about research into how they were performing and what they weren't doing well and so on, because it was a big deal. And we were up against a global hosting powerhouse, and we were just a startup doing less than 10 million in ARR at the time. So these two things allowed me to reduce that perceived value risk gap between the two solutions, and it definitely helped win the deal. That was all mindset. What did we have to do to get the customer thinking in the right way and jumping through the right hoops? So that was a great deal. And another example is another deal, which was a 2019 deal, which we won with Nestle. And that literally tripled in size during the RFP process, because we were finding ways to solicit information from them during the process, which they usually try and stop you doing. So first off, we got a request for a demo license. And that was outside the RFP process. So of course we jumped on that. We turned that into a training and Q&A session, during which we unearthed just tons of positioning gold that helped us tune the offer. And secondly, they specified aspects of the business they didn't want to migrate in the RFP. So I thought, we're not having that. And we spent quite a lot of effort creating comparison tables about why they should migrate these bits of their business. And we found ways to discuss that with key people, and which all made it de facto during the final bid presentations to about 40 people. And that doubled the size of the bid right there. And what we unearthed a little later allowed us to pitch for another big ecosystem that wasn't even out for tender. And we won that also, and that tripled the size of the bid. And it tripled the value, not just for us, but for the customer also, because we had a platform that could take care of so much more than they thought. And I use those productivity metrics again. So both these customers jumped through the hoops that we needed to get them through, despite quite a lot of people saying that it couldn't be done and we'd ruffle feathers and it was the wrong way to go about things. Anyway, I hope I've been able to demonstrate quite a clear link between mindset and performance. And when you perform well, it makes you happy because you're earning well. And that works for me anyway. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Do you want to stay on the stage for some questions? Can I invite Wendy up and Lauren? Yeah, we're just going to...
And Matt. We're not having Matt.
All right, Matt. Go on, Richard, you get up as well. Come on, you're up.
That's not very fair.
I always forget the little one. All right, do you want to... Can you pass the mic along?
Pass the mic. Are you going to be the mic boy in the crowd? You guys keep that mic off. Okay, so what questions do you have for any of the panelists? Don't be shy. All right.
You've got to get them warmed up.
Oh, okay. Go on.
How do you motivate SDRs when they're by themselves getting rejected after vocal every day?
I spend a lot of time with the SDRs. I meet them in the offices and I sit down and do calls with them. And I think they love that. Because
I want to end my question to SDRs, so they just by themselves in their flats.
But in their flats. Well, I do calls with them. We record their calls and I do calls with them. We do joint calls. I sit them in and listen to them. And they let them do the calls and I give them feedback afterwards, and they quite enjoy that.
I say get your numbers up or you're fired. Is that good?
He's sitting just here, so I'll let him know.
So honestly, what is the point of the SDR is they need to go and see the close one deal. So when the SDR sees their AE, follows the deal with their AE and sees the close one business, and you give them the credit for finding it in the first place, that's what motivates people. They're amazing. Like SDRs are the hardest job in the business. So if they actually see the end of it, then... At Gong, we are much nicer than Drift. We'll work for Gong, not Drift.
Yeah, I mean...
Wow. Okay.
All right, let me just...
Sorry, we'll encourage you to be better.
I feel a little nervous, like in between these two. But when we sort of launched our SDR team, we called them Team Titan, and it was a little acronym for some of the values that we instilled in the team and created a system of accountability. But also, I think helping them understand what Wendy said is just like they are at the top of the chain. Like it's like your customers are first. They are on the front lines. There is so much career currency for an SDR. There's so many places an SDR can go. In fact, like someone I used to work with at Glassdoor in a previous role actually is head of enablement for Gong now, and she started as an SDR. So there's like, she's amazing. I mean, there's so much you can learn, so you really need to motivate and like help people understand the long game.
I think I've got a mic, right?
Well, I'm passing over you,
That's
right?
kind of contaminated. I don't really want to sit here.
New question for you.
Pardon?
New question for you.
A new question for me, okay. Do you want a new question?
Anything at the end before we go to the next one?
Oh, okay. I'll be real quick. I like SDRs to have a goal outside of being an SDR. If they're not making the numbers, let's keep them focused on their next, whatever they want to do, going to product, going to marketing, going to sales. Let's help them develop into that next role and not just throw them under the bus. It is a bitch of a job, but you give them the right skills and keep training them to get them better, and so they can be better adults in their future roles. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I think.
Mine works.
On this one.
Hello. I think the key thing is never ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't expect to do yourself. So you have to be there to work with them. So even as leadership, you have to guide where the opportunities actually are. You have to make sure that you get close to them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, James.
Okay, two quick questions. Wendy, you talked about female talent and nurturing female talent. What's one bit of advice you would give to the women in the audience here today and to any sales leaders to encourage more women, not just into tech but into sales? This is a real challenge. And the second question is,
Oh God, I'm not going to remember these vintage.
Are you gonna up the bar tab?
Oh God, that's a question for Drift. I believe they spend more money. They're a bigger sponsor, or Ollie's the bigger sponsor. We're only little. So my advice for women, 3 words: ask for more, always. Well, that's 4 words, but ask for more and then always. So what I mean by ask for more is I was not lucky enough. I worked my ass off and earned 6 figures by the time I was 23, 24 years of age at Goldman Sachs. So I always believed I was worth getting paid because I will always work my butt off and give it the best of my ability. And so you should go into every conversation believing and really owning the fact that you deserve as much money as possible. So always ask for more. Men ask for more and women don't. And please change that. And I will encourage you really always to think about that with a male mindset. Secondly, men, you're just, honestly, all the stats say that like women leaders who lead sales teams have better results. Women reps who are the best. It's very hard to be female in a male dominated industry. So if you find them, they're often the best of the best because they've had a harder path. And by the way, it's not about being against John Smith or the white males of the world. You know, at the end of the day, you must always hire the best candidate, but you must make sure that you see enough great candidates of diversity. So always hire the best one, but make sure you see enough of diversity. And
I'm going to ask a follow-up to that. How do we attract more females into sales?
you have female leaders. Because if you can't see it, it's hard to believe it. So female leaders, you need all the way up. And I know it's hard, especially with maternity leave and everything. Sometimes, you know, you lose women in the workplace at that point, but you have to make it. And I think it comes into flexibility for women that have had to leave for maternity leave. So it's about seeing it at every level.
I agree. I think that one thing is that sales isn't seen from externally. I've got a daughter and I'm sure she will go to sales, but I don't think sales is seen externally as an industry to go to. So how do we actually make the industry more, if they're in the industry they can see the female leaders, but how do we make the industry more attractive?
I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but everything is sales. I was a trader at Goldman Sachs and I was doing sales. That's sales. Trading is sales as well. Every job is sales. There's very few jobs that aren't sales. So at the end of the day, if you're interacting with people and you're selling ideas, you're selling whatever, that's sales. So I think maybe it's positioning in colleges. I don't know. This might be a question outside of my grade,
It's
but
a good question. I'd like us to find a solution for.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
I have an interesting perspective on it, having worked in the States for a while. I think girls in general at a young age are encouraged to play more competitive sports in the States. And so most people in this room that are good at sales are probably competitive athletes too. Yeah. And so I think in the States, the girls want that. You get a lot of competitive buzz in sales. So I think they might be a little bit ahead of Europe, quite honestly, in terms of women in sales roles. It's just my perspective on it. And I think there's more role models now in sports for girls. And there's more role models like these ladies for girls to go into it also. That's kind of how I look at it.
Oh, okay. There was some more hands over there that I saw. Bex.
So what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself in the last 18 months as a leader?
I can't stop eating comes to mind. More of a personal issue than a leader.
I mean, I think we have to all have like a little more like good leaders have resiliency, but I think in these times it's really been figuring out how to have a lot of resiliency in dealing with. I mean, I've had some really serious challenging situations where people were either mentally unwell, we're going through life also continued through the pandemic. So the normal issues that we have between divorces going on and family bereavements and all of those things also happened during the pandemic and were exacerbated. So I think having resilience and empathy, that was really challenging, I think, and challenged every leader. And I heard it a couple of times tonight.
Yeah.
Any other answers for the same question? I think from mine, I think that I learned that you have the need to look after yourself as well.
Yeah.
There was so many people around you as a leader that needed the help, and every so often you thought, shit, I better look after myself, I didn't take time out for myself, and I think I realised that in lockdown that I wasn't doing it enough. There was another hand that came. There we go. Two more questions, I'm afraid. Just Sdrs.
How can salespeople effectively leverage internal marketing teams to get the best out of what they do?
Use drift.
Use dogs.
Or SalesLoft, whichever. Proper answers.
I think you've got to talk to them, because fundamentally there's still this divide of sales versus marketing in some businesses. And the reality is sales is there to support you. Marketing's there to support you. You have to work collaboratively. You have to have an end goal which aligns to both sets of objectives, which is fundamentally getting the company to where you want it to be. But as two organizations, you have to be one. And it has to be that open collaboration.
Yeah, I think they have to have the same goal. Right? Marketing is judged on leads, MQLs, SQLs. Sales is on revenue. I think they need to be the same thing.
I mean, I think it even spreads beyond marketing. It's like everyone should be focused on revenue, especially at an early stage.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Keep your hand up if you've got a quick fire question that everyone can answer. Cool. Okay. Sorry.
How do you ask and get feedback from your team as leaders?
Oh, I have an answer for this one. Yes. Okay, so I do this thing, feedback, which is like, it's so nerdy. But basically you write 3 things on a piece of paper that you appreciate about them and 1 thing you wish you would do differently. And you do it, the entire team does it with each other. You all sit in a circle, kumbaya, and you fill in the sheets beforehand. And you all talk one-on-one. So it's literally just you and the other person. But every single person on your team is forced to give you 1 thing they wish you would do differently. And you're doing it with them and everyone's doing it with each other. So it's not weird.
Kumbaya to that. Well, we use sort of the classic kind of stop, start, continue model. So, and I think that's really effective with your one-to-ones, is just always having like a dedicated, separate from your actual one-to-one, but actually having a feedback session where both parties have to sort of write in stop, start, continue, and just get really comfortable giving feedback. I mean, another book that I read a few years ago that has really been helpful is Radical Candor. And it's just about caring personally and challenging directly. It's a great read if you want to learn more about giving feedback.
We just drink a lot of tequila together and then we get good answers.
That works too.
No, but seriously, I think I've got some of my team in here. I care about them and they know that's not just a job. They're my buddies, so I'm going to start crying. But I care about them and they know that, so I can ask them difficult questions.
James, do you feel cared about?
Absolutely.
Great.
Still got a job.
I think it's feedback is a corporate or a company is typically talked about on a frequency basis, but actually it happens every day. So if you think about it, you have to interact with them. So talking to them about deals is not just about how you fit in at each specific point. It's every day. So it's the communication that you have with them through deal cycles, through discussions, just over lunch, like he says, tequila. We love to drink. Let's get out there.
And Kieron, we haven't heard from Kieron. Anything to add?
I think sort of about being very open and honest about all your staff behaviour and just getting it all out on the table and talking it all through. It's always worked for me.
Brilliant. Can we have a round of applause for all the speakers, please? Thank you, mate. Thank you. And an extra round of applause for Ollie, our co-host. Amazing. This has been our first event back, and I just want to thank everybody that's been involved and supporting me behind the scenes. Also, there's some people that I could invite up on stage that have genuinely supported me during COVID times, which was very difficult for an events business and for many of us. So I just want to put a heartfelt thanks to people that have supported me individually, also to the sponsors and to yourselves. This just wouldn't happen unless you committed to coming out tonight. So let's go and have a drink, go and have a good time. Thank you.